And time for one last look at your traffic and weather from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. A couple things to report. Accidents at Columbia College Drive and North Main Street, I-77 southbound and Forest Drive, Garner's Ferry Road at Hallbrook Drive, Two Notch near Sparkleberry, and St. Andrews Road at Broad River Road as well. Today, some afternoon thunderstorms late into the evening, a high of 82. Tomorrow, morning showers, high of 81. Friday, clouds and sunshine with high of 91. That's traffic and weather on the early game. Nine o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Had to think about that for a second. It is Wednesday here on the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you, navigating your way through the week. Are you a hump day guy? Like, are you somebody that looks at Wednesday like, hey, we're halfway there, we're almost to the weekend? Or is it like, talk to me on like Friday morning?
I look at it like that. Typically, the halfway point. I don't really. I honestly forgot it was called Hump Day until you brought it up there.
I think since that Geico commercial went away, we don't say that as much.
Yeah, I haven't heard it as often, but yeah, I definitely do look at it more so like, okay, we're almost at Friday, so tomorrow will be Thursday, and that's pretty much the end of the week. So, what about you?
Yeah, kind of. And like, this is the first job that I've had that's actually like Monday through Friday, and I work weekends depending on what sport's going on and all that kind of stuff. But I used to work a job where it was like 2 days on, 2 days off. So like I would lose track of the days, to be honest with you, because there was no like formalness to it.
Oh yeah, and plus with the job that we're in, I mean, it's easy to lose track of days because I mean, some days can just feel like a random day during the week that's not even close to what it's actually supposed to be.
Also, there's nothing worse when you're work because that job was 2 days on, 2 days off, and then you alternated weekends, Friday through Sunday. There's nothing worse when you have to work a full weekend, Friday through Sunday, of seeing people like, hey, it's Friday, looking forward to the weekend, knowing you're going to be stuck at that job all weekend.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I do not like that.
Yeah, by the way, that wasn't a radio job, so I don't think I'm complaining about radio. That was a non-radio job that I'm very glad I don't have anymore.
What was it?
I used to be a 911 operator, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Not fun.
Yeah, I can
Not
imagine.
fun.
I'm sure radio sounds a lot better now.
If I never have to answer a 911 call again for the rest of my life, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, now you get to answer calls from some happy or angry sports fans.
Which I will happily take over those kind of things. Trust me. Oh, man, we are 88 days away from kickoff. Now, tomorrow, you're going to fill in for Wes and Chris on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. So I should preface you by saying you're going to have to answer a trivia question. I hope you know that.
So 87 tomorrow,
it'll be 87
right?
days,
So.
yes. And I will, if you get it right, I will allow you to pick either Wes or Chris to award the point to.
That's fair. Okay.
Now, Wes has not gotten a point yet. We are a week into this, and he's not scored a point yet.
He hasn't gotten a point. So Chris has gotten all of them?
Well, Chris has got 1 point. So
okay.
He's not exactly running away with it. But if you, just to keep the thing going, when you fill in tomorrow, you will have to answer a trivia question. So just be prepared from something from the 1987 Gamecock football season.
Oh, geez. All right. Yeah, I'll start doing my research.
So, yeah, we'll keep that going. Again, that's coming up tomorrow. We'll see if Wes can get his answer today for 88 days till kickoff, coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. But we got a lot to get to, starting off with the Football Power Index from ESPN. But first, we kick things off, as always, with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. We are officially in the season of lists, where we talk about top 10 this, top 20 that, top 25's this, and of course, whenever new analytics come out, we have to jump all over it. And perhaps one that is hotly anticipated at the beginning of every single June, the ESPN Football Power Index.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a metric that I looked at a ton last year, and it just gives you a lot of different information that, you know, the FPI and stuff, it may take some time to understand it, like, straight up, but, I mean, you see a lot of these projections. Like, you have the projected win-loss total, the win-out percentage, the chance of winning 6 games, the winning division percentage. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so it's very cool in that way.
So for those that are not familiar, this is per ESPN. The Football Power Index is a measure of team strength that is meant to be the best predictor of a team's performance going forward for the rest of the season. The FPI represents how many points above or below below average a team is. Projected results are based on 20,000 simulations of the rest of the season using FPI results to date and the remaining schedule. Ratings and projections update daily. FPI data from seasons prior to 2019 may not be complete. So again, this is the ultimate analytic look at how teams are expected to perform. And again, this can vary greatly. You're going to have teams that are really low in the FPI that end up at the very top of it by the end of by the end of the season. But this is just kind of a metric based on what we know about these teams. You know, the players that are returning, the players that have left in the portal, the players you've gotten from the portal, what your coaching staff is like, what your strength of schedule is. All these kind of things bake in. And again, they simulate it 20,000 times to spit out these results of where, again, the computer thinks these teams are going to end up being.
And it's very cool in that way, man. It just gives you a lot of information all at once, and it's very easy to look at, and really do enjoy it.
So, of course, the number one question on most people's minds is, where is South Carolina? They come in 15th. That's pretty solid, all things considered, when you talk about 130-plus teams in the FBS. But much like we do when we look at recruiting rankings, we're going to say, oh, hey, look, South Carolina's got the 12th best class, in 2026 or whatever. Where are they at in the SEC? And, 12th in recruiting can be, 10th in the SEC or something like that. Kind of similar here. 15th overall in the FPI, you're 9th best in the SEC.
And I mean, look, the teams that are ahead of them, I think you can argue they should be ahead of South Carolina. Like Texas, Georgia, Alabama make up the top 3. Then you have Texas A&M at 8, Tennessee at 10, LSU at 12, Ole Miss at 13, and then Auburn at 14, all ahead. Oklahoma's right behind South Carolina at 16, so they're 10th, and they have Florida at 18. So you have, 11 teams in the top 20? Yep. It's not really a surprise. And look, South Carolina being in the top 15 is very good to see. I think that's honestly where they're going to be in. I know this is a poll, but this is probably where South Carolina is probably going to be in a lot of the major polls heading into the season, if you really think about it. So it's not a surprise that there's so many SEC teams probably looking ahead of them right now.
Yeah, I would say the Auburn being a spot ahead of them at 14 is the one that I think most people have a problem with. And look, Hugh Freeze is obviously a more experienced coach. He's accomplished more as a head coach in his time in the SEC than what Beamer has, specifically up to this point. But I think South Carolina as a program is currently in a better place right now. Now, I think there's a lot baked into Jackson Arnold going to Auburn and potentially being a better quarterback than he was at Oklahoma that I think carries that a lot. They obviously have a fair amount of talent on their team as well. But, and again, we're not talking about somebody's rankings here. We're talking about computer analytics and spitting out these numbers. But Auburn being 14 ahead of South Carolina is one that is very interesting to me.
They have done very well in recruiting, though. So, I mean, I think that probably gets, put into it a little bit more. But South Carolina being where they are, I think it's a good spot for them. Now, kind of looking at the next thing here, which is the projected wins. So they have South Carolina at I guess so. The way, correct me if I'm wrong on this. So it's basically based on what their win-loss record is going to be, right? So
Yes.
it's listed at 7.3 wins and 4.8 losses. So you're potentially looking at a 7-5 season or an 8-4 season. How do you feel about that?
So, and again, we're talking about simulations here, so I'm guessing 4.8, or I'm guessing somewhere around 4 losses was the lowest projected number of wins based on some of the simulations, and around 8 to 9ish was probably the highest amount. I think that's probably fair. Again, I kind of think about them more in kind of that 8 to 9 win range. But again, and this is the difficult thing about college football now, right? Like, so much changes with teams year to year to year. I look at Oklahoma, who's right behind South Carolina at number 16 in the RPI. They were a disaster a year ago. South Carolina, we talked to the Oklahoma guy yesterday, and he even said, like, yeah, that game was over in 5 minutes because of all the turnovers. But they've got a lot of good guys coming back on defense. Brent Riddle's taking over at defense. John Mateer, the best transfer quarterback, coming in to take over for Michael Hawkins Jr. They're going to be vastly different than they were a year ago. So it is so hard to project what teams are going to be tough when you see them and what teams aren't. Like, again, do we think Vanderbilt was going to be as good as they were when South Carolina went to Nashville last year? Absolutely not. Now, Carolina handled their business, but I think we all sweated that game a little bit more than we had in years past because, oh, it's Vanderbilt. Of course you're going to be able to run over them. Wasn't quite the case last year, even though South Carolina did handle their business.
Absolutely. And look, I think South Carolina is getting a lot of respect this season, no doubt about it. But I think the fact of the matter is they are losing a lot of players from last year's team. We just don't know right now how the players that they brought in are going to replace those that are leaving. And so that can be a little tricky to look at. The other thing is South Carolina does, as always, it seems, have a pretty tough schedule. And look at some of the road games. That could be where those 4 losses come from. You go to Missouri,
Yep.
During a portion of the schedule where you could easily be 4-1 or 5-0, and if you beat Missouri and you're 5-0 going into October, probably changes some things. Then you go to LSU, you go to Texas A&M, you go to Ole Miss. I mean, those are your 4 road games right there, plus the neutral site against Tech, and that could very well be where the losses come. Then again, you have some tough home games too, and you mentioned Oklahoma is going to be better. Vanderbilt is not a team that you can simply just look over now. They're going to probably be very competitive when they come to Columbia in September. So I see where the FPI is kind of coming from with their win-loss projection.
Sure.
However, as we all know, and this probably goes for a lot of these teams on this list, there's teams like South Carolina that can definitely exceed these expectations. Then again, South Carolina could easily underperform and kind of fall in line with where these projections are.
The month of October, it always seems this way for South Carolina for some reason. The month of October is the swing here because I could see a world where South Carolina starts off the season 5-0, maybe 4-1 if you want to say going to Missouri is going to be a tricky road trip there. But what happens in October, going to LSU, playing Oklahoma here, playing Alabama here, then going to Ole Miss, you could go 4-0. You could go 0-4. You could go 2-2. Like, that is kind of where the season hangs in the balance for me in terms of where South Carolina goes.
Absolutely, because, I mean, if you don't do well in October, we're talking about, like, November is typically that month where South Carolina really plays well. November to remember mantra. It's been a thing for the first 4 years of the Shane Beamer era. Those games in November, I mean, you get it's much lighter when you get to play Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, Clemson. I mean, those are all teams that are very much beatable in a lot of ways, although you do have to go to College Station. But you're right, that month of October, it's going to determine what this season really is about. Because, I mean, look, if you lose to LSU, okay, but you really do have a chance to win the next 2 games, considering they're at home and you're playing teams that you actually played very well against last year in Oklahoma and Alabama.
We'll take a little bit more look at this from a South Carolina perspective, also branch out and look at the greater SEC as well, because like I said, no surprise, there's a lot of SEC teams at the top of the FPI, and what does that mean for the college football playoff? We'll discuss that coming up as well. It is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Belcher along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry hanging out with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. You can download the 1075 The Game app as well and take us with you wherever you go. Find that at iTunes Store or the Google Play Store. We are looking at the ESPN FPI and what it means for the 2025 South Carolina football season. Talking about that strength, that overall schedule for South Carolina, 13th overall when it comes to strength of schedule for this upcoming season, which I feel like in that's kind of low compared to years past. You always feel like they're in like the top 5, if not number 1 overall, which we'll get to number 1 coming up here in just a minute. But 13th overall in strength of schedule, 9 of their opponents find themselves in the top 50 in the FPI.
I mean, look, it's not surprising at all that they are pretty high in the strength of schedule. Again, they always seem to play a relatively tough schedule, and that's what you get when you play the SEC, you play Clemson, who's always pretty good. And, I mean, look, you're playing Virginia Tech at the beginning of the year, which is no slouch, but you know, we'll see what Virginia Tech ends up becoming.
There's a reason South Carolina is heavily favored in that game.
I would say so, especially on a neutral site. Probably helps a lot. Now, looking at South Carolina though, and that strength of schedule number, yeah, I think you're right, Tyler. I think it is a little surprising to see South Carolina not with like the number. I mean, in some years they've had the top ranked strength of schedule just because they've always played like Georgia, Tennessee. They don't have those teams on the schedule anymore, and they're going to be playing, I feel like, pretty much ranked teams almost every week. The polls have not come out yet, I don't believe, but
right,
we're probably going to see South Carolina as a ranked team going up against a lot of ranked foes throughout the season, especially as we get into the month of October, which is where that strength of schedule really beefs up.
Sure. Yeah, and I think when you look at like a year ago, what we thought about certain teams has changed. I mentioned Vanderbilt obviously ended up being a tougher matchup than we thought it was going to be, given what they had done, against Alabama. And I think they played Texas after South Carolina, but they played Texas really close as well. So they ended up being a lot better team than we thought they were going to be. Alabama didn't end up being as tough as people thought they were going to be, and Carolina nearly had that game. LSU you took down to the wire in a controversial game here at Williams-Brice Stadium. So I think, especially given the fact that South Carolina proved that they could finally start beating ranked teams again at the end of last year when it came to A&M, when it came to Clemson, I don't think there's anybody on this schedule that you look at as like, oh, you're trembling in fear against them, right? Like, okay, 2 seasons ago when South Carolina had to go to Georgia coming off of another national championship, and look, South Carolina had the lead at halftime. They played a very tight game there, but I think everybody looked at that game and said, okay, you're probably going to lose that. I think you look at every single game this season, maybe for the first time ever in the Beamer era, saying, all right, yeah, going undefeated is a hard thing to do, but there's no reason why you can't win all of these games in some form or fashion.
Again, yeah, you're totally right on that. And I think the thing is, we talked about before, how is the talent going to translate over this year? Can it be as good as it was last season? Because they brought in so many new faces that ended up just being the cornerstones of what you were able to do in 2024. If you get that again here in 2025, if you are able to strike gold twice, you're very much on your way to getting that 10-win season that you so desired and almost got last year. I think that is a very realistic possibility. Again, I just think it really comes down to, okay, how do you do in some of these road games that you have on the schedule? I don't think you're going to go undefeated here on the road, but let's say you're able to go, I think 2-2 on the road. Honestly, you'd rather go 3-1 because you'd rather beat Missouri than maybe have one of your losses come maybe in that 2-game road trip where you have Ole Miss, bye week, and then Texas A&M. And not to mention, you have a bye week before the LSU game. So you have a lot of opportunity here to get some of these wins on the road. And it's not like you're going to have to, come off the heels of a really tough loss in a lot of ways and then go play on the road immediately after. Twice this season, A&M and LSU, you'll have a bye week right before.
And I say this a lot. This is a perfect example of a time when you just have to put a lot of faith in the coaching staff when it comes to A, evaluating their talent, and B, developing their talent. Because a season ago, we had a lot of questions about this team, but they were still a very senior-laden team. One of the most experienced teams in all of college football, and yeah, we didn't expect to see guys like Demetrius Knight pop the way that they did, which was obviously great to see, or Kyle Kennard for that matter. But you felt like with the senior leadership this team had, they were probably going to be in okay shape. Now you don't quite have that same level of comfort right now because, again, you lost so many guys, to the pros, to the draft, and all that stuff, or just, quite frankly, ran out of eligibility. This is where so much pressure gets put on Lenore Sellers, so much pressure gets put on Dylan Stewart on the defensive side of things is, okay, those are your cornerstones on both sides of the ball. How good can everybody around them be is the biggest question.
Yeah, and if they are any bit as good as the guys that they had coming in last year, like the Demetrius Knights of the world, the Kyle Kennards, so many others that were so integral that South Carolina did their homework, got the evaluations right out of the portal, and in high school recruiting, bring in Dylan Stewart. I mean, if they are able to do that again, which I think is very much possible with a lot of the talent that they brought in, I think it's very likely that they could have another successful season. I think this is going to be a really strong season for South Carolina, just coming off of what they were able to do last year. Like, I don't think we are in for regression. I don't think this is like 2 years ago where, injuries happen and stuff, and the schedule's very daunting. I mean, again, you don't have to play Georgia or Tennessee or any of those teams on the schedule. Yes, you have a lot of tough teams on here, but I think it's games that you actually have a really good chance. Like you said before, Tyler, there's a good chance South Carolina is going to be having a chance to be favored in a lot of these games.
So as you look elsewhere in the SEC, if you're curious who has the toughest strength of schedule, to no surprise, Florida gets it once again this year. We talked about their daunting slate in the month of November, which, hey, credit to them. They beat Ole Miss, they beat LSU, and they ended up being better than we thought. Billy Napier coming back for another season. Obviously, you're playing the same teams from the SEC, really kind of like South Carolina. A lot of the schedule is very much the same. Obviously, you got your out-of-conference game with Florida State. They have a return game with Miami where they will go down to Miami towards the beginning of the season. Listen to this slate in the first. So they play Long Island, South Florida, first 2 weeks of the year. After that, they go to LSU, they go to Miami, and they host Texas. I mean, that alone, and again, we'll see how good Miami is now that Cam Warren's gone and Carson Beck's taking over at quarterback, but bookending that game with LSU and Texas on either side, that's a tough way to break yourself into Power 4 opponents.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And then going into November, I mean, it's going to be – this might be the month that might be the most tricky. And depending on how Kentucky and Florida State do, I mean, we viewed the end of last season kind of as like, all right, we saw the gauntlet, and it was like, that stretch of where Florida had to play seemingly like a top 10 opponent every single week.
Yep. And again, they won 2 of those games.
Exactly. So they won 2 of those games. And that's part of why Billy Napier did not get fired, because if they had, we're looking at the season a lot different for the Gators. But, I mean, you get Georgia, you go to Kentucky, you go to Ole Miss, Tennessee's at home, Florida State's at home. 3 of those teams we know are going to be ranked for sure probably by the end of the year in Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. It really is just about, okay, what does Kentucky look like and what does Florida State look like? I think going to Lexington can be really tricky. We saw what happened when, obviously, South Carolina was able to handle business no problem going to Lexington, but we saw how much Georgia struggled when they were on the ropes when they went to Lexington last year. That's different, but you look at the situation, could very well be the case if Florida is coming off a loss to Georgia or whoever it might be. And then that Florida State game at the end of the year, you never know what can happen. So the schedule for Florida, as usual, like last year, very tricky.
By the way, speaking of Florida, this coming out yesterday, they had been searching for a new university president for almost a year now, since their prior one stepped down, I think, last July. And they seem to be zeroed in on Santa Ono from University of Michigan, and they have voted against that. So back to the drawing board, still no president. Your coaches are acting out. A lot of interesting things happening down there in Gainesville.
Yeah, it's just they cannot seem to get down to getting a solution with who their next president's going to be. I mean, it felt like they were very much getting close to getting one, obviously, with Santa Ono here. But, reading this article here from On3 more so about it, it just seemed like Ono's appointment was just not a foregone conclusion to getting the job to be the next president at Florida. So We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's kind of it kind of fits in line with everything that's going on down in Gainesville right now.
Well, and if Napier has a really bad season, you want to move on from. I know they have an interim, but it's kind of hard to fire coaches when you don't have like a permanent president in place. So yeah, messy things down there in Gainesville.
And that's what made it tough last year. I mean, yes, Florida was decent last year, and they actually turned it around a little bit to make getting rid of Napier not as easy as it seemed. But, I mean, yeah, it would be nice for them to have a president just because with an interim, it's just not as easy to get these things done, like you said.
We'll take a look at who's the top of the FPI and what Alabama player is already talking trash ahead of the Vanderbilt game later on this year. We'll tell you about that coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Wednesday on the game. Tyler Head here once again telling you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. If you heard my weather report a little bit earlier on, you know that there's some rain coming into the area starting today and persisting through the next couple of days. And if you have an open crawl space under your home and recently experienced a storm, you could have some standing water under there. That can create all kinds of problems for your home, like mold, mildew, can also invite pests like termites into your home as well, and even affect the air that you and your family breathe, because about half the air that you breathe in your home does come from your crawl space. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation and crawl space issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday here on the game. We talk a lot of things FPI as ESPN put theirs out yesterday. Carolina finds themselves 13th overall, but 9th in the SEC. To no surprise, the top three, all from the SEC, are Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. Of course, South Carolina having to take on the Crimson Tide coming up in that tough month of October. And again, when you kind of talk about the teams that are always going to be in the conversation of the best three in the SEC, these are the ones, and that doesn't seem like it's going to be changing anytime soon.
No, not at all. I mean, Texas, they're going to be very good once again. I mean, look, they are just one of the top teams in college football. You have Georgia, obviously, as we all know, and then Alabama had a little bit of a down season, I would say, last year, losing that bowl game, obviously, to Michigan to finish with 4 losses. So that was disappointing for the Crimson Tide in a lot of ways under Kalen DeBoer in his first year. But this is an Alabama team that returns a lot of talent, didn't lose anyone to the transfer portal. So these 3 teams are going to be right in the mix for not just the college football playoff, but obviously the national championship picture when we're talking about that.
By the way, what a great place to be where 9-4 is considered a step back and a disappointment.
I know. I mean, for teams like, obviously for South Carolina last year, getting to 9 wins was a major success. And then you look at the other side of it, Alabama going 9-4. That's a major disappointment.
Speaking of Alabama, by the way, that downfall, if you want to call it that, began with their stunning loss in Nashville to the Vanderbilt Commodores and Diego Pavia. Yesterday, or in the past couple of days, Ryan Williams, who is now 18 years old, not a 17-year-old kid anymore, was on John Gruden's show and was asked specifically about what happened in that Alabama game and how much he's looking forward to the rematch this upcoming season.
What the hell happened to you guys against Vanderbilt?
Man, they played a better football game than us this game. We came out slow, and they capitalized. They held the ball. They had their game plan, and they executed.
What do you say to your team when you got Vanderbilt this year coming into Tuscaloosa?
Man, going into this game, it's we don't call them revenge games. So we gonna kill an ant with a sledgehammer this year. So I mean, just every game that we fell short last year, we definitely got red eyes going into them.
Boy, that's rat poison if I've ever heard it before, isn't it?
It definitely is rat poison. That's something that I'm sure Clark Lee is going to be taking a look at and being like, that's whiteboard material right there. Now, to be fair to Alabama and to Ryan Williams, I think he's probably right because I think Alabama is just going to be a lot better this year than they were last year. And you look at the matchups this year. Vanderbilt has to come to Tuscaloosa this year. And then, look at another team that he mentioned basically alluded to was Oklahoma, and they have to come to Tuscaloosa as well. And we know how hard it can be to win at Bryant-Denny Stadium sometimes. And I think this is an Alabama team, again, that could easily go out here and do what Williams says. It's just, can they play their best brand of football?
And what he's saying, he's probably not wrong. I'm going to take Alabama to win that revenge game in Bryant-Denny Stadium later on this year. But, we're so not used to hearing this from Alabama players, right? Like with Nick Saban, every Alabama player was buttoned up, pretty much gave you nothing answers to not give any rat poison to any of their opponents. They were the masters of just going about their business as usual. And when Kalen DeBoer came in, he's a different kind of coach. He's more open about letting his players express themselves. What they wear, the media availabilities that they do. They're going on podcasts and all these kind of things. Ryan Williams was painting his nails last season. You know what I mean? It's a very different culture at Alabama than what Nick Saban had. And I'm cool with that because I don't think as a coach you should have to go in there and try and be somebody that you're not. Hey, if this is your way of coaching, that's fine. I think, though, the jury is still out on if this is going to be successful or not. We'll have to see because remember last year when people were mad at him for wearing a T-shirt on the sidelines and they were blaming that on the reason why they were losing some of those games. This is a fan base that has a standard that's sky high. And when you come in and start changing things around and let players be more expressive, if you're not winning enough games, this stuff isn't going to fly.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you have as talented a roster as Alabama does, and you are basically handed the keys to a brand new, pick whatever car you want, the nicest car possible. That's what Alabama has with Kalen DeBoer taking over. And you kind of dented it a good bit last season with some. I don't think you totaled it, but it did not look good when it came to what the car looked like at the end of the season. So now, look, I mean, you really do have to make the playoff this year to, I think, deem this next season here a success. I mean, you cannot go 2 years in a row to begin your tenure and not make the playoff, especially now that the playoff is expanded.
This year is going to be pivotal for Kalen DeBoer on if people will still continue to fear Alabama the same way, right? Like, I think it's expected there was going to be a little bit of a step back when you move on from the greatest coach in college football history to a guy that had had a lot of success but not in the SEC. Obviously went 9-4 last year. If they go out there this year and they go, 11-1 and make the playoff and are playing in the national championship, I think people say, okay, 2024, a little bit of a blip, but they're back to being what we expect Alabama to be. But if they go like 8-4 this year and miss the playoff again, I think that perception of like, hey, when you see Alabama on your schedule, you should be shaking in your boots might actually go out the window going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, I really do feel like the schedule, though, for Alabama is favorable to where, yes, they go to Florida State. Yes, they go to Georgia. Yes, they go to South Carolina. And at the end of the year, no matter how Auburn looks, which I think Auburn's going to be decent this year, going to Auburn can always be tricky. But the home games that they have, having to play against LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Wisconsin even, too, early in the year, I feel like the schedule is favorable in a lot of ways to where, yes, they could lose a game or two, but this is an Alabama team that I expect to really bounce back and be a lot better this year.
If they go like 8-4 and lose to Auburn on the Plains, they might not let Kalen DeBoer back in Tuscaloosa after that game.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, that was the one thing that was missing from a down year last year was if they had lost to Auburn,
yep,
Kalen DeBoer might not be here right now, but considering they did beat Auburn, you do have that. But again, you're looking for something bigger. Beating Auburn is probably just the expectation for Alabama. You should be able to do a lot more with what you have.
Man, we know weird things happen on those plains. You never know. You never know. I mean, it took a miracle fourth down throw for them to beat them in Sabins last year. So who knows what kind of voodoo they've got cooked up this year.
Those games at Jordan-Hare, those are the toughest games. Auburn, for whatever reason, cannot win at Bryant-Denny. They have not done it since Cam Newton's season in 2010.
That's right.
But going to Auburn, it does not matter how bad Auburn can be or how good they are. They are just tough to beat at their home stadium.
It's kind of one of the funny things about college football that, I don't know, it makes us all enjoy it so much because weird things like that happen, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. What sports venues do you still call by their traditional name or the name that they used to have they no longer have? We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Wednesday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head, Jack Belcher, along with me for a couple more minutes here. Jalen Chard will jump in with me at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. I wanted to get to this. News coming out yesterday. My home racetrack, Atlanta Motor Speedway, has a new name. Jack, my home track will now be called Echo Park Speedway for the next 7 years after they inked a multi-million-dollar agreement with Echo Park Automotive, which is a car dealership, essentially. You may have seen them. I think there's one like Augusta or something like that. I will still call it Atlanta, as will most people that I know, because that's what we've always called it, and that's what we always will call it, regardless of what brand name you end up slapping on that. And I got thinking about this. There are so many venues out there, and especially in today's world where I feel like venue names change a lot with sponsorships and all those kind of things and naming rights, that we still call venues things that were their name 20, 30 years ago, right? Did you do that too?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, you look at some stadiums out there that have their old names and stuff. And honestly, the names now of stadiums are just very corporate and stuff. And I think that's what we kind of see here with Atlanta Motor Speedway. I mean, I'm sure you do not like it at all, right? I mean,
it's one of those things, it doesn't change anything. It's just kind of silly to me. And again, hey, if you can get money for it, okay, that's fine. But and racetracks are something. There have been some that have had brand names before, but it's not something that's commonplace outside of football and baseball stadiums that it's pretty frequent for. But again, I'm going to keep calling it Atlanta. I'm going there in a couple weeks, and I imagine most people there will still still call it Atlanta Motor Speedway. But I think about some of these ones that have changed names so many times. What is the Broncos? What's the name of their field now? I don't even know. It's obviously at Mile High, but I always think of it as Sports Authority Field, which Sports Authority doesn't even exist anymore. But that's what I think of.
Sports Authority is no longer a thing. Let me pull it up. It's definitely, I always refer to it as Mile High because I think that's what it was originally called.
Yeah, and that's always in the name, at Mile High, but I never
Power Field at
Power
Mile
Field.
High.
Okay, in Power Field, but maybe it's just, and I think when you grow up as a sports fan, whatever the name was when you were a kid to teenager, that's probably what's going to stick with you, right?
Oh, absolutely. A few that I think of, one in particular that's just on my mind is you look at American Family Field, which is where the Milwaukee Brewers play.
Yep.
I think of it as Miller Park, which is such an iconic stadium name because it's named after Miller Lite. So
sure.
I think that is just a very catchy, quick name. And then you see it change. I think it was changed to American Family Field a few years ago. And quite frankly, I don't even know what American Family is because it's a brand. But
it's I think it's mortgage or insurance, one of those two.
Yeah. So,
I don't know. It's American Family Insurance. Yeah, the jingle.
Yeah. So, I mean, do we really call it American Family Field? Maybe, but
not really.
More so Miller Park.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where the Cardinals play now, the Arizona Cardinals. It's State Farm Stadium, but I always think about it as University of Phoenix Stadium because that's what it was for so long.
I think of it as State Farm. I think that's one of those things where maybe I honestly I don't really. When did they switch it over to State?
It was a handful of years ago. It's been State Farm for a while, but I still think of University of Phoenix.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel about some of the ones that I think are still catchy, but when they change the names? But it's for example, you have with Oracle Park in San Francisco, which was AT&T Park for the longest time, and before that, I think some people probably still call it Pac Bell Park.
Sure.
And then in Seattle, you have what's it called?
It's where the Seahawks play.
Well, they changed their name too.
Yeah, they're at Lumen Field now.
Lumen Field, because that used to be what did their stadium used to be?
Was it CenturyLink? It was CenturyLink.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And then, I was also thinking of the Mariners. T-Mobile is their sponsor now, but they used to be called Safeco. Which
I wasn't even aware they changed it. I've always called it Safeco.
Oh yeah, I mean Safeco was, again, that's such a simple name, Safeco Field. but they changed it. So a lot of these simple ones, these 2-word simple names, they just get changed, and it's just some of them are good, some of them are bad, and I don't know.
How would Yankees fans react if they sold the naming rights to Yankee Stadium?
I mean, it'd be very, very weird, but very on brand for the Yankees because number one, the new Yankee Stadium. I like it. I enjoy going there. It's definitely nicer than the old Yankee Stadium, but old Yankee Stadium had that charm to it, and so new Yankee Stadium became like I don't know, like I don't know, some random bank name or whatever. Some stadium like that, named like that. I think it'd be very much in line with what the Yankees are about now.
Yeah, well, they've got ads plastered everywhere else on the stadium, so why not, right?
Oh, exactly. I think it's just the new reality here is that you don't see many teams nowadays with their own team name on the stadium. It's always some sponsorship or something.
Shout out to Dodger Stadium, staying true to the name.
Exactly.
That'll do it for hour number 1 of the Extra Point. We'll see you back in here tomorrow, Jack.
All right, see you tomorrow.
Right, hour number 2 on the way. It's our ahead once again, telling you about our friends over at Twin Peaks. The month of June, yet again, another busy month in the sports world, and all gets rolling tomorrow with the NBA Finals. Game number 1 tipping off tomorrow. As it all comes down to this, you can get yourself down to the number 1 sports bar at Twin Peaks and catch every second of the final series in professional basketball and see who will take home the championship trophy. And then coming up next week, you have the U.S. Open for the PGA Tour, where you can catch the world's greatest golfers compete with scenic views of every swing over at Twin Peaks. Can't make it to the tee box to watch your favorite golfers? No sweat. Just pull up your local lodge and catch all the action on wall-to-wall TVs, plus, of course, those 29-degree draft beers, which they'll be pouring all weekend long. All this and so much more with our friends at Twin Peaks right down the street in the Vista. Oh, 10 o'clock. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, along with you, Jalen Tart, jumping in with me as he does
What's up, man?
each and every Wednesday. How we doing today?
I'm good, man.
Doing well.
Playing the Madden 2008 soundtrack.
Was this in Madden 08?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Madden 08, Madden 09. I think it was one of those two, but
Let me look that up. I don't remember that. I had Madden. I had both those games.
me too. The Brett Favre cover.
Yeah, that was Madden 09.
That was Madden 09. Yeah, that was Madden 09. So I was like,
Now, that song is very vulgar.
yes.
Was it a censored version or they just have the instrumental?
I think it was a censored version.
Let me see. And I'm curious because I do not remember that being in there at all.
Me being a music guy, yes.
Wow, you are very right. Undead was indeed in the Madden 09 soundtrack.
Yes. So, yeah. But today, I know I do my shirts every week.
Yep, what we got today?
Paid in Full.
Okay, nice.
Wood Harris, Mekhi Phizer, and Cameron. Great movie. I'm in the middle of watching it. This is my first time watching it.
Okay,
And
now, did you have the, how long have you had the shirt?
I just bought it. I was
Okay.
in the middle of watching it, and I was like, let me stop. I went to the store, went thrifting with my friends last weekend, and I saw the shirt. I was like, yeah, I got to get it. So I was like, yep.
So you had already started watching the movie?
Yeah, I
and
started.
then you
That was
found
the
shirt? Okay.
that was the crazy thing is like I started watching it, and soon, like randomly, it just popped up out of nowhere.
Now, how deep in the movie are you?
I'm like 20 more minutes left.
No. Why couldn't you just finish it?
I was finishing it this morning. I was
Okay,
finishing
all
it this
right,
morning.
all right.
So I was like, let me watch it. I was like, okay.
What's the assessment so far?
I like it. I like the 2002 feel. I love 2002 movies. I feel like movies that came out between 95 and 2005 were really good.
I'm glad you brought that up. There is something endearing about movies made in the early 2000s. I can't put my finger on it.
neither.
And I like 2002, I turned 6 years old, right? So like this is as I'm growing up and that's kind of the world around me at that point in time. But I don't know what it is about that specific time period. Like we all have rose-colored glasses when it comes to nostalgia anyway.
Yeah.
But something about the early 2000s is like the sweet spot for me. Like,
like
oh
it.
man, all that was so cool back then.
Yes, it was amazing. I personally like the music. I like the movies that were shot because it really told a story. And it's just like, if you can hook me in with stuff like that, yep, I will watch it.
The fashion as well.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember this. Everybody had those really small circular sunglasses that were like, I don't know why that was the popular thing, but it was. Like the baggy, like really big t-shirts and oversized jeans. That was kind of a thing. Like the hip hop scene and stuff like that. So yeah, there's something
All the
special
chains
about
and the jerseys and
2002.
everything. Yeah, like it was. That was
Yeah,
a time
yeah.
that I wish we grew up in at an older age.
Oversized clothes, very large chains, flat bill hats hadn't really come around quite yet. I don't think that was a little more later 2000s. But yeah, that was a time to be alive, man.
Nah, for real. And I wish we had more stuff like that now, but times are going to continue to change
so
as we go forward.
So you'll have to let us know when you finish Paid in Full what your
It'll be
full
by next week.
assessment is.
It'll be by
Okay.
next week. So.
All right, so there's your fit check for the day when it comes to Jalen. And again, I'm impressed that you find all these things at thrift stores. I don't know, when I go to like a Goodwill or something like that, I just kind of skim through things. And I'm mainly looking for like sports related stuff. I don't have the dedication, I guess, to pick through it and find that stuff.
I just simply go through every single color. I wear a large and an XL in everything. Not in everything, but shirts particular. I have
Okay.
to go through everything. And if I see something that pops out, I'm going to get it. That's just me.
Well, we'll have to get your tips on thrifting one day and more thorough.
For sure.
Because again, you're the king of finding these things.
I got you.
As stands today, we're 88 days away from kicking off the 2025 season. Carolina and Virginia Tech scoring off in Atlanta. We're to that point of summer where like this is where it feels like it gets really long, right? Because at least through the spring, you've had basketball, you've had baseball, you've had things that have kind of distracted you a little bit. And yeah, you still got the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals start coming up tonight, I believe. But like this is where the content of the sports world slows down and you just kind of singularly focus on football lying ahead, which I think makes that wait that much longer.
I think so, too. This is where the climax of basketball and hockey are starting to culminate, and then you're seeing the first leg of baseball come throughout the summer. That's really going to be the only thing that's going on, and potentially tennis right now with Roland Garros. But I think with football being on the horizon, with the hype of the NCAA College 26, and then with the meetings and everything, you're starting to see a lot of buzz going around with teams.
Now, did you play College Football 25 last year? Did you get it?
I do not have a game. That's another thing.
You
I do not
don't?
have a game system.
Now, I specifically went out and bought a PlayStation 5 because College Football 25 was coming out. That was a hefty investment, obviously, but it was a lot of fun. So
hopefully my curse is broken by this year. Praying to the gaming gods.
Yeah.
Honestly, I will say I think the hype with South Carolina has been talked about since their bowl loss, and it's growing bigger and bigger each and every day.
And again, they had one of the better seasons in recent memory for this program, and rightfully so. They're going to be featured on a lot of lists. You know, Lenore Sellers being talked about in the Heisman conversation. All that stuff's cool, as well as the analytics going into the season. And ESPN put out their FPI yesterday, which again is a just huge analytic spreadsheet, essentially, where they do 20,000 simulations. It spits out these numbers, and you kind of rank teams according to that. They come in 15th overall, 9th in the SEC, though, which, again, kind of like recruiting rankings when you talk about, hey, it's good that you're analytics. This isn't the end-all, be-all of where these teams are going to finish specifically, but this is significantly higher than they were a year ago, which was 33rd going into the season based on the numbers that were run.
And that's a good jump by Carolina to get to that point, but to have them also finishing have a 14.7% chance of winning the national, of reaching the playoff, is kind of, a good, sample for them to be in. But honestly, finishing 9th is kind of a head scratcher after the way that they finished last year. I know from what I've researched, a lot of people are riding high on Missouri this year, which me personally, everyone's riding high on them last year, and they had a disappointing year. So maybe they're having a resurrecting year. But I honestly, with the talent that Carolina has, I wouldn't be shocked if they finish top 5 in the SEC again from what they did last year.
And you bring up the point of their percentages to make the college football playoff, which is 20.3%, 22nd overall in the country, according to the FPI. I took a look at last year's FPI prior to the season. It always comes out at the beginning of June, to see how good the FPI is at predicting college football playoff teams. Of course, last year was the first time we ever had a 12-team college football playoff. Do you want to take a guess how many teams that made the playoff were outside the top 12 in last year's FPI?
7?
Almost 6.
Okay.
So, of course, you would think if the FPI was 100% accurate, it would have teams 1 through 12 end up being the 12 playoff teams. And last year, 1 through 4, Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State all made the playoff. Makes sense. 6 and 7, Notre Dame made the playoff. Number 9, Tennessee made the playoff. That was the only teams in the top 12 that made it in. You go to 15th and you find Clemson. You go to 25th and you find SMU. 48th, you find Boise State. 63rd, you find Arizona State. And no surprise here, but again, it kind of encapsulates how amazing their run was. Indiana at 77. Again, nobody saw them
saw Indiana coming in. Yeah,
that kind of run in Kirk Cignetti's first year, and obviously making the college football playoff. But that shows you, and again, these are just analytics. It's not the end all be all. It's kind of a baseline for where you expect teams to be. But even with that, it can vary wildly. You could look at a team. I'm just going to kind of go randomly here in this year's FPI. But when you scroll down, and let me just pick a random team here down in the 70s. You could say, okay, I'm looking at Oregon State at 80. Again, nobody's thinking they're going to make the playoff, but what if they do? Like, again, Indiana was that kind of team last year. Now, again, different the situation being in not really a conference in the Pac-12 and all that kind of stuff, but that kind of shows you just never know. And especially with the expanded playoff field, so much changes year to year with these teams that, again, it's a baseline, but it's not an end-all, be-all.
And that's the thing, too. And we also can't really predict injuries. God forbid that no one gets injured this year, but an injury to one of these teams could really, collapse their chances of making a playoff, depending upon who it is. But then again, too, it's like it is unpredictable. And I like that it is unpredictable because we get to really see what Carolina is really made of.
Yeah.
And the first game will tell us what they're really made of.
And I think that's the exciting but also scary thing about an offseason like this, right? Where last year we had a lot of uncertainty, and I brought this up to Jack earlier, but you had a lot of experience on the team. Again, especially on defense. I think South Carolina was one of the most senior-laden teams in all the country. So while maybe some of the production numbers weren't there in some areas, you thought the experience would kind of balance things out. Fast forward to this year, you lose a lot of that experience. Yes, you have Lenore Sellers, you have Dylan Stewart, you have a guy like Brandon Cisse coming in the secondary as a transfer. There are some notable names in there, but it's not completely across the board. So as good as last year ended up being when you had unknowns going into the season, you always have that fear in the back of your mind that it could go in the other direction for you this upcoming year. Because guess what? Every other team out there is trying to upgrade. Every other team out there feels like they did a good job in the portal and made their team better. So college football, college sports in general, becomes so hard to predict year to year because so many variables change in an offseason.
I mean, look at the other teams other than Carolina and just the SEC alone. I mean, Ole Miss looked really good, and they missed the playoff. They could potentially have another great year after what they had last year with Jackson Dart. And it's other teams. Illinois, they had a really good year last year. Unfortunately, yes, Carolina lost to Illinois, but they're being talked about as well. So it really can be unpredictable, but at the same time, too, it's about what you put on the field and backing up, what you're going to do. I mean, Carolina, they've been very adamant about having a national championship team. I believe that they do with this team, going off of the momentum they had last year. But we'll see with the schedule that they have. I mean, from what I saw in the FPI, too, they also have Alabama coming to Carolina being one of the most anticipated games this year. So that could be a key game that they have to win in order for them to make the playoff this upcoming season.
Yeah, again, the month of October, that's the swing. You got LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Ole Miss. And again, you could win all four of those games. You lose all four of those games. You could split it 2-2, 3-1, 1-3. Like who knows?
And again, Alabama's your homecoming.
Yeah, that is bold, by the way, to do that. And man, if you beat Alabama here, I know it's not a Saban Alabama team, but that would be quite a celebration. Coming away from that game if that happens.
Yes.
We'll transition over to the NBA coming up next. Obviously, the NBA Finals get rolling starting tomorrow night, but big news for a team that just got eliminated over the weekend as the Knicks have moved on from head coach Tom Thibodeau. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart on your Wednesday here on The Game.
Like you would do after every season, you take a step back, I think decompress, you do a deep dive on the team, and then you analyze what you think you need to improve upon, and then we have the draft, and then we have free agency, and there's trades, and then there's the internal development, and then it's the study and preparation for next season, and so it's a big off season for us.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points. Howard and Jalen Tart along with you. That was the voice of Tom Thibodeau after the Knicks got eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals on Saturday in game number 6 by the Indiana Pacers, and you hear him say those we's and those us's and those kind of things. I think following that, this was the Knicks' response.
We? We.
And as we learned yesterday, the Knicks have indeed fired Tom Thibodeau as their head coach, despite having their most successful season in 25 years.
That's New York culture for you guys. I mean, with New York, if you don't get to the finals with the year that you had, on top of you beating the NBA champion Boston Celtics, no.
But, is there not something to be said about progress and taking steps forward? Because they lost in the conference semis the past 2 years. So you took a step. You, again, beat the defending champs, and you got to a place, again, you hadn't been in 25 or however many years, getting to the conference finals.
I think for me, I'm on the fence with the firing. I think Tibbs did do a great job. They were not relevant in the 5 years that he got there, and you were a part of bringing Jalen Brunson, who is the heart and soul of this team, to the Knicks to do what he has been able to do for the past 3 years. But for me, how I'm looking at it on the other side, you lost to the Indiana Pacers twice, 2 years in a row, in the semis and in the conference finals, in 7 games the first year and the 6 games this year. I think for New York, they know that they have the team. I think they're in the hopes of trying to get the right guy, but this could also backfire on them to where they may not get back to the conference finals or potentially to the finals going into next season.
And one of the biggest knocks on Thibodeau is not using a lot of bench guys. But at the same time, their team's probably not as deep as a lot of the other teams in the playoffs. So is that all on him, or is that something you got to point your fingers at the front office about?
I think it is on him because you didn't use any of your depth until game 5 in the Indiana series. The games you should have won was game 1 and game 2. You had game 1 in the bag. You were up 14 with 2 minutes left to go in the game, and you stunk up the joint with Tyrese Halliburton's miraculous shot that was in the air for God knows how long, and it just drops right in, and it goes to OT. If that had never happened with you locking down defensively, you being a defensive-minded coach, yes. But I could also put blame on the players. Most of the time, they were playing in isolated coverage. Mikal Bridges, I'm about to call him Miles, you're one of the best perimeter defensive players in the league. You were nowhere to be found. Cat was getting blown in drop coverage. Tom Thibodeau had to switch the coverage of it. He was getting blown in the regular coverage as well. It's sometimes, I mean, it also is on the players, but Thibodeau could only do but so much. Brunson carried the team for the majority of the playoffs, averaging over 30.
So here comes my question. Now that you've fired Tom Thibodeau, whoever you hire, maybe it's Mike Malone. That seems to be a hot name as of right now. We'll get to that in a second. But whoever you bring in, are you expecting them to take this team to the finals in the first year? Is that what you're saying? Because if you're moving on from a coach that got you as close as you've been in a long time on the doorstep, are you now okay with taking a little bit of a step back as a new coach comes in?
I think for New York fans, their expectation is a championship. You have not been to the NBA Finals since 1973. They have been waiting, and they're starving for one. They feel like they're there. I think the hire is going to be what everyone is going to be watching in the offseason. I wouldn't be shocked if Jay Wright comes back into the coaching frame. I say that because he's coached Bridges. He's coached Josh Hart. He's coached Jalen Brunson. Brunson is the head of the snake for this team. Now, Mike Malone is the smartest pick to me because you've been to a championship within the last 2 years with Jokic. You brought the best out of him, and you brought the best out of Jamal Murray. The thing with New Yorkers is they may not see what is the familiarity with Brunson. That may come to a clash, but Mike Malone, it's also from New York.
I also believe Mike Malone does utilize his starters a lot as well. So
Yes.
I don't know if you're getting a different philosophy from what Thibodeau was doing.
I think, it's the Thibodeau firing is tricky, but I can understand why fans are upset about it, but are also at ease.
My thing is you have to be pretty darn sure whoever you hire after this is definitely going to take this team to the NBA Finals. Because, again, look at the progress. You took a step forward this year compared to the past couple of years. Again, you had missed the playoffs 3 seasons ago. You lost in the conference semis the past 2 years. You now went to the conference finals. And, again, it took some miracle craziness in some of those early games for Indiana to get past you. So, like, you were on the doorstep.
Yes.
And now you're making a change at the top. Like, that's risky. That's very risky.
But then the finger could also be point to the management, to the front office, because Dolan and mainly James Dolan, this is how he moved. This is just, with how, when you don't perform at the expectations, me personally, I would be upset losing to the same team twice in the postseason, 2 years in a row. I would be upset.
Yeah.
That's just me.
I don't know. It's I wouldn't have done it personally.
I thought he did enough with what he had. They were in the series. They were in it, but it just wasn't enough. He didn't have a bench like how other teams had depth on their team.
Yeah. So we'll see who they hire, and we'll see if they take a step back and continue on the success they've had in the past couple seasons. Of course, the NBA Finals get rolling coming up tomorrow night for game number 1. It really seems like nobody's giving Indy a chance in this one. It seems like overwhelmingly everybody's saying OKC and 5 or 6 or something to that degree.
I think for me, what is your game plan to contain Halliburton? And on Indiana's side, what is your game plan to contain SGA from getting to the free throw line?
Well, to be fair, they have beaten Indiana both times they played them this year in the regular season. And OKC does have the best defense.
I don't know. This is the postseason. This is the finals. This is another level above of what they went through. But for me, I think it's the Thunder. The Thunder have a more collective team than Indiana. And I think that just with how they've been playing, they've been the best team all year. And I would not be shocked if they win it. I see it going to 6. I see it going to 6.
Okay, but you still think the Thunder win in 6?
Yes, I think the Thunder will win in 6.
So, and the Thunder, how many losses do they have this year?
In the postseason?
Or in the regular season? It wasn't a lot. They had one of the better records we've ever seen. And I know it's hard for people to look at things that happen in modern times and say, oh, well, that team could be one of the
68 and 14.
68 and 14. Okay, yeah. I knew it was something crazy like that. I mean, if they win the finals, especially if they're doing like 5 games or something like that, I mean, are we talking about OKC being maybe one of like top 5 best teams ever?
Yes, and honestly, I'll say this. SGA will be probably in the conversation as the best Thunder player in franchise history.
Yeah, it's fair. Now, and again, you're talking about 2 organizations. And again, are we talking about the Thunder as the Thunder, or are we talking about them as the Supersonics too?
Yes, because he's delivered them a championship on top of him winning his first MVP.
Yeah, and again, you're talking about 2 organizations that have not won NBA championships. And that's the interesting thing about this that, we don't see all that often is, 2 programs going for their first one.
Yeah, and that's the exciting thing about the finals. Like, it could be marketable teams in the finals where everybody would watch. If it was a Steph LeBron in the finals again, everybody would watch. But I think this finals is interesting because they're in search for their first, and it's not like you have an underdog, and a Goliath, a David and Goliath type of deal. Yeah. But you're dealing with 2, newcomers into this, space that we're seeing in the NBA Finals. Yeah. So it's exciting to see for basketball fans.
Where do you gauge your excitement level for this finals compared to the other ones?
I'm not like over the moon about this finals, but for me, I like to see newness. I like to see a new generation step up into a spotlight, so to speak.
Okay. We will talk a little bit more finals to wrap up the hour coming up here in just a little bit, but it is Wednesday. Talk some racing with Jen Jensen of the early game coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrett along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll get to racing with Jen Jensen in just a moment. But first, it is time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. And it's not really a surprise to say that the Pittsburgh Pirates have sprung a leak because they've been gushing water for a while now because of how bad of an organization they are. I do want to take the time to say how bad I feel for Paul Skeens. Last night against the Astros, goes 8 full innings, gives up 3 hits and just 1 earned run. Pirates lose 3-0. Last 6 starts for the Pirates, he has gone at least 6 innings in every single one, has given up no more than 2 earned runs in any of those games. They've lost 4 out of the 6. It's rough.
Could we also say that the Rockies springing a leak as well?
Actually, they've won 2 in a row.
Yeah.
They're actually trending kind of in a direction. So it's not as bad as it's been, but they are the worst team in baseball.
Well, they're trying to fix their pipes. But at the same time, that's great that they're winning because 9 wins and 50 loss. Well, that was atrocious from what I saw. But.
Well, again, I feel bad for Paul Skeens. Jen Jensen joining me now on Love Chevrolet phone lines. Nobody feels bad for her team because they are currently number 1 right now in the NL Central. It's a good time to be a Cubs fan, right?
I was going to say, I'm listening to this going, oh, my gosh, this has been us for how many years? I'm not part of this conversation this time, so I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it's always nice to not be the butt of the joke anymore, right?
Yep, at least for this year so far.
As we turn our attention to the racing world this past weekend, NASCAR out in Nashville, Ryan Blaney getting his first victory of the season. Something that he's always knocking on the door of. In fact, I looked it up. He'd had 5 top 5s in the past 7 races going back to Darlington, so coming so close, finally able to get it done in dominating fashion on Sunday night at Nashville.
Yeah, that was exciting because he's had a couple strings of bad luck as well during the season. A couple DNFs that are just not normal for him. He's had engines blow up. He's been collected. So for him to finally pull out that win, I mean, he was a rocket, and I just definitely a dominant car, and I was really thrilled for him to see him get the win and see kind of some progression for Penske.
And we had, I don't think the race overall was quite as exciting as the Coke 600 was the week prior, but you had a pretty interesting battle there with him, William Byron, Denny Hamlin's up there. I think Reddick got up there at one point, like mixing up the lead towards, I think it was the end of stage 2. Which, again, maybe not the best race overall in terms of what we had a week before, but some pretty exciting moments nonetheless in those battles for the lead.
Oh, no, absolutely. And it did seem that was kind of the same, for the most part, the same trio that kept battling throughout for sure after the second stage. And once the track kind of opened up and widened a little bit, that did help. But it really was tough to pass. And sometimes that can make for exciting racing. Sometimes it can't. And, in the case of a Carson Hocevar, you just kind of don't care. And you just, anyway.
Well, we'll get to Carson in just a second. You just mentioned Team Penske. I think it's interesting because, of course, Ryan Blaney drives for Team Penske. I think it's interesting to look at the difference a year makes because a year ago, almost pretty much on the same weekend, they were racing at Gateway. Cindric got the win there, which was the first win of the season for Team Penske. And, Logano got his win at Nashville. Blaney finally wins at Iowa and Pocono. And they turned it on as the season went along, obviously en route to Joey Logano winning the championship. But they are much, much stronger out of the gates this year. All 3 of their drivers have wins before we even get at the halfway point of the season. Blaney and Logano both top 10 in points. I think Cindric would be in the top 10 in points had it not been for that points fine that he got after the Coda race. So a night and day difference from Team Penske and Ford as a whole from where they were just one season ago.
Yeah, no, huge difference for them. And when you look at their counterparts in other series like IndyCar and stuff, it's like they seem to be a little more buttoned up right now or not having the drama, and they are focused and dialed in. And it's definitely, it was a good weekend for them for sure. I mean, they had, two cars in the top 10. So I think Penske is in a good place, and I'm kind of anxious to see how the second half of the season plays out for them.
You mentioned Carson Hocevar, and he was once again making headlines over the weekend. I saw somebody say that, and by the way, have you gotten to watch the Earnhardt documentary on Prime yet?
No, that is this weekend for me because I've got to watch it.
You will not be disappointed. It is phenomenal. It's one of the best documentary pieces of racing content I think I've ever seen, and I think you'll love it. I did see some people saying, hey, I think Carson Hocevar watched the Earnhardt documentary this week because his give no hex attitude and take no prisoners is definitely showing up on the racetrack.
Boy, yeah, he didn't make any friends with Stenhouse for sure. But again, he's a young driver. He has to learn. I know a lot of people are kind of talking about him, and he's too aggressive. But isn't that kind of how Logano came up and how Kyle Busch came up? I mean, it's funny. They're all settled in now, and now they look back and say, "Well, this kid."
Sure.
I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of difference.
And by the way, I like Hocevar a lot. I think he's one of the more talented young guys in all of racing right now. And you're right. A lot of these guys that have come up with that kind of brashness do eventually kind of mellow out. And I think that'll eventually happen to Hocevar as well. But it's one of those things where, again, this has been a consistent issue with him. Even go back to his Truck Series days where he oversteps the line, being too aggressive, gets himself and other people in trouble. And there have been so many drivers that have complained about it, but nobody's done anything. You know what I mean? Like, if you go out there and wreck him yourself, if you go out there and punch him on the face in pit road after the race, then maybe you're sending a message. But until you do something like that, he's just going to keep doing it. You know what I mean? So, if you're going to talk the talk, walk the walk as well.
Yep, and it makes you wonder, the sanctioning body saying, hey, it's borderline, but it's tough racing, it's good racing, and we're getting headlines out of it. So, do we need to go back to the brawls, by the haulers and let the drivers themselves settle it? I don't know.
I don't,
and not encouraging violence, but
I don't think he's doing anything that's like out of Brown's egregious. Like the thing with Stenhouse, that was a situation, where you could have let him in line, right? Like you're both going for the same piece of real estate going into the turn. If you back up, a little bit and let him get in line, no harm, no foul, and you keep on racing, but didn't want to yield the spot. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's not like he's out there right hooking people left and right. That's when you have problems. But again, you have a lot of drivers saying, hey, this kid's a problem. Well, if he's such a problem, do something about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. But I'll tell you what, it's good for Spire Motorsports right now.
It is.
They're loving it. He's doing well. I mean, he's making a lot of headway in the points, and second place finish at Nashville is just not a bad thing for him and the team.
Look, I made the prediction before the season. He's going to win a race at some point this year. I mean, I agree. That could come this weekend in Michigan in his home race. How cool would that be? But
and he'll be gunning for it.
Yeah, no doubt he will. And if you get in his way, he will make sure you're quickly out of his way. But I think it's so interesting that Spire only a handful of seasons ago was a team that was just putting enough into their cars to show up to the track and run laps. Like now they've legitimately turned into a program that can compete for and potentially win races here soon.
Yeah, no, a lot of growth for them, and McDowell's been not too bad. Justin Haley hasn't raced terribly, but McDowell's had a little bit stronger in a few at a few of the tracks. So, but I think right now Hocevar is kind of the young gun that's kind of getting all the conversation and really kind of driving the team.
And look, anytime you compare someone to an all-time great, people are going to get upset about it. But I feel like the aggressive brashness of a young, very talented driver is something that's good for the sport. Because, again, you look at, you go watch the Earnhardt documentary. It's exactly the stuff he was doing. Now, again, I'm not saying that Carson Hocevar is the next Dale Earnhardt, but you see some of those similar type of traits that it's always funny how people react negatively to something like that happening now as opposed to when they didn't do that back then.
Yeah, well, exactly. It is funny. It's definitely different. And you look at some of the older drivers or people who aren't driving anymore. Kyle Petty kind of talking. So I mean, he's gotten the conversations from a lot of different people, and not everybody's being completely critical of what he does. Again, maybe he just needs to kind of tone it back. But he is aggressive. He's not afraid to mark his position and fight for it. So he still needs to refine some of his driving styles, but he's got a great personality. I think he's just going to be really good for the sport if we can just kind of hone him in a little bit.
I wish he would go back to wearing the goofy hats. I always liked that about him.
Right? That was always so much fun. And again, it's fun to see him. I mean, he's so tall, so to see him crawl out of a car, like they've had a lot of fun with that personality-wise. So again, maybe we'll get him to go back to the hats. That'd be great.
By the way, he's only 22 years old. He has a long career ahead of him.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. So I'm looking forward to Michigan. I think it's going to be a great race, and I think if they come to the track with a good car, I think he will be a force to reckon with.
By the way, I always look forward to Michigan because it is now the fastest track on the circuit.
I love Michigan. That is a bucket list track for me.
Yep, going to be well exceeding 200 miles per hour this weekend, which is always exciting to see. And then this time next week, we're looking ahead to NASCAR's first ever trip for the Cup Series, at least to Mexico City.
Yeah, that's going to be phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to that. And they're kind of getting the seeding going for that $1 million in-season challenge. So we have lots to talk about with that as well. It's an exciting time right now for the sport.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it next week.
Hey, me too. Thanks, Tyler.
She is Jen Jensen from the early game. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. A little bit NBA Finals trivia. How good is Jalen with this? We'll test him coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head. Jalen's Hart along with you for a few more minutes here, wrapping up hour number 2. Again, NBA Finals get rolling tomorrow night out in OKC. Tip off at 8:30 on ABC. How good are you with trivia?
We shall see.
We shall see.
We shall see.
I've got a rousing game of real or fake where I'll present 4 facts to you. You'll have to tell me which 2 are real and which 2 are fake. Think you're up for that challenge?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm up to it.
All right, let's go. Number 1. Again, your answer is real or fake. The total distance between both home arenas, between Indianapolis and Oklahoma City, is under 700 miles. Real or fake?
Real.
That is correct.
Okay.
688.4 miles between the 2 home arenas for the Thunder and the Pacers, which is the shortest distance since the Milwaukee Bucks and the Baltimore Bullets back in 1971, which was 641.6 miles.
I just knew, like, okay, Indiana and Oklahoma is not that far.
They're both Midwestern.
Yeah. So I was like, all right.
Which I guess Oklahoma's kind of southwest, but still.
Yeah.
It's the general middle area of America. All right. Question number 2. If Tyrese Halliburton wins Finals MVP, he'd be the youngest to ever do it at the age of 25.
That's fake.
That is correct. That is fake. Magic Johnson back in 1987 at the age of 20 years old was the youngest NBA Finals MVP.
Cool.
2 more.
Cool.
Again, 1 real, 1 fake. This is the first time in 20 years that the 2 teams in the finals had no prior titles. Real or fake?
20 years, that's 2005. Okay.
Yes. So since 2005, has there been any other finals matchup? Or basically since then, in the past 20 years, there been any other finals
That's
matchups?
fake.
So you think there's been no other final matchups?
Between, oh, no, that's real. That's real.
That's real.
That's real. That's
So
real.
the last time was the Heat and Mavs in 06, which would have obviously go back to the 05 season as well. Yeah, very rare that this kind of thing happens.
Yeah.
All right, final one for you, which I guess you can do process of elimination here. Indianapolis and Oklahoma City are both top 20 media markets in the NBA. Real or fake?
Fake.
Very fake. Indianapolis 22nd. OKC is 26th.
Ooh, okay. So they're not that far.
They're not that far. Do you know what the lowest media market is?
No.
Memphis.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Where are they at?
28th. So
okay.
Because you have shared media markets with LA and New York.
True. Okay.
But yeah, Memphis is 28th. Like New Orleans is above that. But yeah, and that's kind of the conversation that always comes up around a finals like this is because the NBA is such a star-driven league. And yes, you have young budding stars, SGA, Tyrese Halliburton, all that kind of stuff. But like, does the casual basketball fan care about this? Does the casual basketball fan want to watch this as opposed to when the Celtics are playing or when LeBron's in the finals or when Jokic was in there a couple years ago? Like, do people care about this one as much?
Yes and no. If this was Anthony Edwards, a lot of people would be watching this.
Right.
A lot of people would be watching it.
Because, again, he looked as, I don't know if he's ever going to ascend to the heights of the Kobe's and LeBron's and stuff like that, but he's somebody that most people say has the best chance of being that of today's young group of talent, right?
Which, yeah, I agree. I think with SGA and Halliburton, it's just like, this is like the welcome to the moment or, you know, the I have arrived type of game or series. And I think it's going to be very interesting because both players are very, very good. Halliburton has gotten criticism about him being overrated. SGA is one of those type of players where, you know, can he elevate his scoring? Can he elevate his all-around game to another level? I think we're going to get those answers in this series.
Is that going to be a fun trivia question like 20 years of like who won their first title, either SGA/Halliburton or Anthony Edwards? And the answer would obviously be either Halliburton or SGA.
That would be like a hidden question or, you know, something that people may have not known or, you know.
Yeah.
I think if people are watching, you know, the game now or starting to tune in, people are going to be like, well, Anthony Edwards looks like that player that may have already have a championship, but he doesn't. But at the same time, too, like I said earlier, this is a new era now. And I'm loving what I'm seeing, You know, it's interesting, it's new, but I like it. It's in good hands.
We'll see what happens. They'll be, gosh, I mean, what, 3-ish games in by next Wednesday? So I'll have a good gauge of where things are at by then.
And it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
See you then, man.
Awesome. See you next week.
All right, coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. 11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you once again. I feel like today's the day, Wes. I feel like today's the day you're finally going to get on the board. I think
that is what you said yesterday. So
I'm believing in you. I feel like I have a question that you're going to be able to answer today correctly.
Eventually, I'm just going to start cheating.
I told Jack, because he's going to be in here tomorrow while you're out at camp, that he's going to have to answer the trivia question. If he gets it right, he gets to choose who gets the point. But I heavily influenced him to give it to you because you're behind right now.
I am behind, Wait, who did Chris get?
He got one of them.
He's got one?
He's only got one.
I thought we were both over
he's
at this
not,
point.
He's not running away with it yet. So you still got time. Still got time to catch up.
He hasn't even been here.
He hasn't been here, which is why I was hoping this week was going to be your chance to, make an imprint. So I
some karma for me being here and him not.
Yes, I think I've got a question that you can answer today, all right? You ready for this?
Eventually, we're going to get, into the last 2 decades on this thing.
Yeah, and I think that's when the points will really start to tick up.
I hope at that point we'll start to...
Yes, but for today, because we're 88 days away from kickoff, we'll go to 1988. In 1988, South Carolina played multiple schools from the state of North Carolina. How many did they play? Multiple choice answer here. Your option is A, 3, B, 5, or C, 7. How many schools from the state of North Carolina did the Gamecocks play in 1988?
How many schools from the state of North Carolina did they play in the year 1988?
Yes.
And can you give me my options one more time?
3, 5, or 7.
Oh, man. Give me the middle one. Give me 5.
You think 5?
Yes.
That is correct. Finally on the board.
All right.
5 schools. Can you name the 5? No, you don't have to do that.
Well, I mean, there's only so many options is the thing. So
yeah, I think
I'm guessing they played NC State.
Correct. This is back when they're still in the ACC. Or no, they were independent.
They were independent.
By that point. Yep.
NC State, ECU.
Yep.
App.
Yep. 3.
Did they play North Carolina?
They did. One more. Would have been in a Division I AA team at this point in time.
Western.
That's correct. You got all 5. I'll give you half a point for that.
Okay. All right. All right.
You have a 1.5 point lead right now.
I'll take it.
That's the interest. It's so interesting looking back on some of these old schedules. And again, I'm doing this for the purposes of the show, but also learning things myself when kind of looking at these schedules. South Carolina only left the state of South Carolina. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 times in the regular season, and that was all in consecutive weeks at Virginia Tech, at Georgia Tech, and then the game at NC State up in Raleigh. Other than that, they played the entire season, in the regular season at least, in the state of South Carolina.
Well, even then, you weren't going far.
No,
even
you weren't.
when you left the state. I mean, it goes to show you. And I know there's other conferences that are dealing with the, realignment and traveling even more than South Carolina certainly is, but it kind of just locks in and reminds you just how, I guess, global we've almost come, or at least national we've come in terms of college football, where it truly did used to be a regional sport, I think. And, you're talking about a team that was independent and having to put together a schedule involving schools all over, and it still sort of put them in that little geographical bubble down here.
I should have done this ahead of time. I just thought about it now, but do you think the collective miles traveled to Blacksburg, Atlanta, and Raleigh would equate to what it takes to get out to Norman, Oklahoma, or Columbia, Missouri?
Oh, that's a good one.
I don't feel like it would. Let me see if I can do that really quick.
What was the first one you said?
So they went to Blacksburg, Atlanta, and Raleigh. That was their 3 road trips in the regular season.
Yeah.
The collective mileage going to those 3 places, would that equate?
Blacksburg is a little bit of a trek, I feel like, but Oklahoma itself is probably farther than the 3 combined, is it not?
Again, I'm doing the math here really quick while we're sitting here talking. Blacksburg is 255 miles away. Atlanta is 193.
Oh, Blacksburg's closer than I thought.
Okay. And then Raleigh's not as far. Again, this is great radio. 183. Okay. And let's see how far it is to, what do you think's further, Norman, Oklahoma, or Columbia, Missouri?
Norman,
Oklahoma. That's a 15-hour road trip. Jeez. Oh, that is over 1,000 miles. Wow. Yeah, that is way
a
farther.
Straight up trek.
So and again, they flew last year, obviously, but
yeah,
they traveled more going to one game at Norman, Oklahoma than they did almost going and coming back from all 3 of their road trips back in 1988.
Well, even Columbia to Columbia, Missouri is 870 miles. Jeez. So then you got, obviously the Texas schools. Now you have 2 Texas schools on.
One of them that right now you see every single year.
Yeah. Ridiculous, honestly. And obviously there's more money in it to be able to afford these trips, but still insane. And that's nothing compared to what I would say, your former Pac-12 schools that are now in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And the traveling they're doing, especially for the smaller sports that aren't revenue sports, I don't even know how it makes sense.
Well, and I almost wonder, and now they do it on private planes. I'm sure there were plenty of times where they had to fly public as well. Like, I imagine for a lot of these road trips, even back in the 80s, you were probably just getting on the bus and going. It's like, we're not going to charter a flight to Blacksburg. It's only a handful of hours up the road. And now, again, you just kind of fly everywhere outside of going to Clemson, the upstate, I guess.
Yeah, they still bus to Athens, I think.
Which is closest 3 hours.
Yeah, but wild.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy to look back on this. And, again, you find interesting nuggets about the schedule itself. Do you know what future Notre Dame coach was an assistant on that staff?
It was Lou.
No, not 1988.
88. Did Lou coach here as an assistant way back in the day? I feel like I've heard that somewhere. Maybe I'm completely off.
Let me see.
Anyway, you don't have to look that up.
I can. Let's see. He, was an assistant back in the 60s.
Yeah, a couple of decades off. There you
go. But 1988, Charlie Weiss was actually an assistant on that staff under Joe Morrison.
I knew that. I didn't know that, but I knew Charlie Weiss was an assistant here. Wait, do you remember when Charlie Weiss was the name?
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, he was, the mid, because when was Brady Quinn at Notre Dame? That was like 05, 06, around that time when he was there. That was...
Sounds right.
Yeah, that was when he was the hot button coach for to go everywhere, I guess.
Yeah. Funny how the can't miss coaches sometimes miss.
Yeah. And yeah, that kind of fizzled out. And let me look it up here, what his record at Notre Dame was. They had the first 2 years, they're 19 wins and 6 losses, played in a Sugar and a Fiesta Bowl, and then 3-9, 7-6, and 6-6. And then after that's when they hired Brian Kelly.
His name, I feel like, would come up at South Carolina every now and then. Or maybe I feel like even in terms of like OC possibilities, because he got his master's here. So he like has a degree from Carolina.
Now, was his name ever brought up in the post-Spurrier coaching search? Because he got fired at Kansas after the 2014 season. So and that was actually the last time he coached at all. He hasn't been doing anything since, coaching-wise. Was his name ever brought up at any point?
No, because I think by that point it had fizzled out.
Okay.
Because Yeah, he was only at Kansas 3 years.
Yeah, and he spent 4 years here as an assistant back in the 80s.
Yeah. That was really his first college job.
Yeah, he did some high school stuff before that, but I'm assuming he had some kind of connection with Joe Morrison or somebody on that staff that helped him get in. And that outside of the time at Notre Dame, that was his longest tenure of any college program.
Bounced around. He was at Florida, for a year as the OC?
Yeah, 1 year as OC. Was that the year when he broke his leg when he got tackled on the sideline, or was that when he was at Notre Dame?
I don't remember. I really don't.
I think it might have been when he was at Florida, or it might have been when he was at Kansas. He got 2 players went off to the side, and he kind of got swept up in it. That's like the first thing I think of when I think of Charlie Weiss for whatever reason. I guess it shows you how good of a coach he ended up being over time.
I had forgotten.
That's what I think of.
I'm reading on him right now. Jeff Samardzija was, I feel like, just an absolute stud back then with Brady Quinn delivering the ball to him.
Yep.
That's probably, other than Brady Quinn, Jeff Samardzija is like my standout memory that pops in my head.
Yeah.
When I think about those Notre Dame teams.
Yeah, they were. That was them, I guess, rising back to prominence. And again, Kelly ended up taking them to a national championship and playoff appearance as well. And Marcus Freeman got them as close as they've ever been to a national championship since Lou Holtz won them that one back in '88.
Mm-hmm.
So crazy. But there's your history lesson for the day. 1988, South Carolina. 5 teams from North Carolina collectively traveled less miles going to and coming back from all their away games than the one trip to Norman, Oklahoma last year.
Do we know what their record was over the state of North Carolina?
In season?
In 88, did South Carolina dominate North Carolina? Did North Carolina dominate South Carolina?
They were undefeated.
Got a win over UNC off the bat.
Yeah, they beat all 5 of those teams. That was actually, and I know the steroid thing was also tied into the season. That was a pretty good season, allegedly 8-4. But yeah, they were undefeated against the Tar Heel State
and beat number 6 Georgia.
They did. Only losses at Georgia Tech and a number 5 Florida State team that came to town.
Yeah, crazy.
So, is this them avenging that loss to Navy from 1984 in this season?
With a 19-8 win.
What a score!
I don't know how that happens.
Is that a scoregami? Think that's ever happened before?
How do you even miss 2?
I guess
PATs, or you're kicking a ton of field goals.
So if Navy scores late to make it a 2-score game where all you need to do is get a touchdown, a 2-point, and a field goal to tie, I guess that's your reasoning behind it. Maybe. I'm not looking at the box score. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. I was alive, but I wasn't around.
You were not consciously aware of that.
Yeah, no.
And it looks like that was actually the first time they played Navy since that. No, they played him in '85 as well. So they avenged the loss then. But yeah, the Navy game is a sore subject for many people from 1984.
Rightfully so.
Yep. We'll dive into the ESPN FPI that came out yesterday. Where does South Carolina sit, and where does it look like for the rest of the SEC? Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Yeah.
Our friends over at Game Day Men's Health can help you as a man reclaim your vitality by optimizing hormone levels. They specialize in TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, which will help boost your energy and strength. And they're a lot different than other clinics that do similar things. They have in-house labs that can deliver your results in just 15 minutes. They're conveniently located in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and Two Notch Road. Comfortable man cave style clinics with TVs and refreshments while you wait. Also great, they don't use any long-term contracts. Flexible plans tailored to your needs. TRT tests available to check your levels with absolutely no obligation, and then ongoing monitoring committed to your success with expert guidance. You can get started by going to gamedaymenshealth.com/north-columbia. Again, located just off I-77, or give them a call, 803-265-3161.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyron West along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll get into the ESPN FPI in just a moment. But, Wes, you've got some information on miles traveled?
Yeah, kind of interesting. So this would not be the specific number for the football team, but I got a text from Van Clark. He and his wife, Beth, are the handlers of Sir Big Spur.
Right, I've met him.
And
Yep.
so this would include every football game except Vanderbilt, because I guess Vandy does not allow live mascots, I think is one of their rules.
All
and
right.
then potentially, I don't know. And then this also includes some baseball games and some other sports along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But they traveled 14,200 miles this season with South Carolina Athletics with Sir Big
Jeez.
Spur.
Now, are they on like the team plane? Do they get like
I have no idea.
Comped or
no idea.
Wow, that's a lot.
I mean, you probably have to make specific arrangements for a bird.
For an animal, because you can't just have that in your hotel room.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but yeah,
I'm sure Van can give us some specifics at some point.
I'm sure there's a very detailed breakdown of miles traveled, cost, and all those kind of things for what they do every year, single year. But shout out to them. I got to hold Sir Big Spur at y'all's kickoff party a couple years ago, and that was a little bit of a scary experience. I'm not gonna lie.
Was he chill with you, or
what? He was pecking at Van's arm the entire time, which, I mean, that guy's arm must be calloused at this point because he got pecked about 20 times when I was holding him because he redirects the anger so he doesn't peck the person that's holding him.
Football is around 8,500 miles, according to Van.
Yeah, that's a lot. And again, the conferences have stretched out. You're not exactly just traveling 1 or 2 states over anymore. So lots changed. Looking now at the ESPN FPI, which came out yesterday. Always
and they drive all of it. Just got a text.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's even crazier. So shout out to y'all for the dedication there to get Sir Big Spur to as many games as possible. Yesterday, ESPN FPI comes out. South Carolina, 15th overall in the FPI, and I'll remind people that are not familiar with this. This is the definition per ESPN.com. Is a measure of the FPI is a measure of the team strength that is meant to be the best predictor of a team's performance going forward. FPI represents how many points above or below an average a team is. Projected results are based on 20,000 simulations of the rest of the season using FPI, results to date, and the remaining schedule. Ratings and projections do update daily. This will change throughout the course of the season. Again, it's kind of just a starting point here. It'll change as the season goes along, but South Carolina finds themselves in the top 15 among some pretty interesting names in college football in the SEC.
Yeah, and I think if you look at not just the computers, but a lot of the human element out there in the polls, this is about where South Carolina has been all off season. Somewhere, maybe as high as 10, as low as maybe 17 or 18. So this is right in between, sitting there. I think it's interesting some of the other schools that are around South Carolina, some that have garnered preseason hype, some that have not. I mean, a little bit jarring to see in Auburn sitting there one step ahead of South Carolina in this thing. And I always think it's interesting on FPI, the projected record as well. And so that would give basically the average record among those 2,000 simulations that the computer supposedly does, 7.3 wins and 4.8 losses. So you're talking about somewhere between 7-5, 8-4, but a little bit skewed towards 7-5, which I think after what happened last year, after 9-win regular season, Carolina fans would probably be a little bit disappointed with that, but you certainly can see why, especially, and I don't know how much it takes into account what all they lost on defense, but you could see why the computers would probably point that direction. I think a little bit of a step back there.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well, and we kind of talk about this when it comes to recruiting rankings, that, hey, Carolina can be 12th in this year's recruiting rankings, but they might still be 10th in the SEC because of how loaded the conference is. Kind of same thing here, where you're 15th overall in the country, but 9th in terms of SEC teams. And looking through this, South Carolina's going to play 9 of the top 50 teams in the FPI, including several above them, namely being Alabama, Texas A&M, Clemson, LSU, and Ole Miss as high as the lowest of them in front of them at 13. So again, as we know, you have a tough schedule every single year, and this kind of reinforces that once again.
Yeah, for sure. Now it does get pretty interesting if you look at some of the other, I guess, data on here. Playoff chance percentage. So I gotta think. For South Carolina going into any season ever, if you said, hey, Gamecocks have just over a 20% chance of making the playoff, just in their history. I know the playoff it looks much differently now than it did before, but if you just blindly said, hey, you got a 20% chance of making the playoff, South Carolina football team.
Yeah.
You're feeling pretty good about that, I think. Now that only puts you. It's not numbered on here, so wait. I was trying to just added up, basically, that puts you right around 25th or so.
Yeah, it's 22nd in terms of overall playoff chances. So, again, but when you think about it, and I don't know if the FPI was around back in, 2014-ish, but I would imagine maybe coming off the 2013 season, and that was the inaugural playoff, obviously, in 2014, that may be the only other time you'd be talking about a team with that high percentage maybe going into the season of making a playoff, given what they had done the season before.
Yeah, probably, and all the percentages would have been lower just because you had so many fewer slots than you do right now. I think. You could argue that at least mathematically, according to this metric, this is the best chance South Carolina has ever had preseason to play for a national title. Essentially, is how you would say it. And now I do think some of this stuff. Like, they have Texas with an 84% chance of making the playoff. I mean, I don't know how you can honestly say any team has an 84% chance of making the postseason in college football without playing a game yet.
Sure.
I know supposedly they have the best team money can buy this year, but to already sort of be at that high of a percentage is a little bit out there for me.
Quickly, I find it funny that they have a percent to win division metric still on this, even though that most conferences have abandoned division, so it's just 0.0 all the way down. Maybe they need to remove that one because it doesn't seem quite as relevant, especially in the power conferences anymore. But like you mentioned, you've got Texas at the very top, number 1 in the FPI, Georgia after that, Alabama at number 3, Ohio State at number 4, and last year in the RPI, all 4 of the top teams prior to the season ended up making the college football playoff, that being Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Ohio State. But And I brought this up earlier, there's such a variance, especially now that you talk about expanding out 12 teams, of getting, and again, this isn't somebody's list, this is based on analytics here, but you had, again, the top 4 make the playoffs last year, but 6 of the 12 teams that made it this past year all found themselves outside of the top 12 in last year's RPI at this point in the summer, those being Clemson, SMU, Boise State, Arizona State, and, of course, Indiana at number 77. So making the playoff, you don't have to look at this and say, okay, well, if we're not in the top 20, then you don't have any chance here. Like, this can vary wildly, especially as you make the playoff field bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and it will, of course, adjust every week during the regular season once it gets more updated data. I tell you what, just caught my eye, too. Virginia Tech, 26.
They're
I mean, there is kind of a feel around here, I think, from the fan base, hey, this is a game South Carolina not only should win, but probably should control. And, we've talked already about, hey, it's a game 1, it's a neutral site, you never know what you're going to get in a game 1, but they're, at least according to what goes into this algorithm, it's not like Virginia Tech is a terrible football team, according to them.
They're not. They had a pretty good defense last year. It was their offense that was an issue. Now they're bringing Philip Montgomery from Alabama to kind of shore things up as an OC, but defensively they still should be pretty good. So you are going to have to account for that in game number 1. My question becomes of how many points can they actually put on the board, which I think knocks them down a little bit. But again, when you're running the simulations and the RPI, they do end up netting out pretty well at 26th overall. So again, kind of reinforces how many tough opponents South Carolina is going to have to play this year.
Yeah, and it hit me when Beamer was talking on 107.5 on Friday. Virginia Tech this year. What do you say, Miami? That's already on the schedule for next year?
Yeah, you got a back-to-back with Miami. You've got, I think, a home-and-home in North Carolina, and the same thing with NC State. That's the next roughly 6 years of your schedule, and, of course, Clemson every year as well. And now if the SEC goes to 9 games, that could all change, obviously, but as of right now, you're playing at least one additional Power 4 team, all from the ACC, funny enough, through 2031.
Yeah, we'll be interested to see if those games get booted.
We'll look at some of these numbers as well. Where does South Carolina rank out with the strength of schedule, and who's got the worst or hardest strength of schedule in 2025? That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, folks, this episode and all of our episodes of the Gamecock Central Takeover are brought to you by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Almost lunchtime. Hit them up right now, firehousesubs.com, or do what we do. Download the Firehouse Subs app. Hit the Rapid Rescue to go right now. Order your lunch. It's going to be waiting for you right there on the shelf. We've been telling you about these 2 new hook and ladder subs brought to you by Hot Ones Hot Sauce. Zesty Garlic Hook and Ladder or the Spicy Dill Hook and Ladder. Limited time offers, though, so if you've tried them and you loved them or you haven't tried them yet, go try them right now because soon those will be rolling off the menu and another limited time offer sub will be coming right along. Or I know you all got your favorites. Mine, brisket, add bacon. Tyler's, turkey bacon ranch. Whatever your favorites are, they got it waiting for you over at Firehouse Subs. Go ahead again, download that app, create an account, get points every single time you order, and get a great hot sub from Firehouse Subs right now. FirehouseSubs.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyron West along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Now we're getting our way 88 days until the kickoff of the 2025 season. Looking at the ESPN FPI that comes out at the beginning of every June to kind of get an idea and a sense of where teams are and what their 2025 season might end up looking like. Moving over to strength of schedule for the season, it feels like every single year South Carolina finds themselves in the top 5 of this category at this point? Surprisingly not this year. Actually 13th overall in strength of schedule at this point. To no surprise, the Florida Gators, once again, like last year, number 1 in this category.
Yeah, they that's been crazy to just see the changing perception around Florida too. Like I think last year, a lot of the talk was more about preseason, about the schedule instead of Florida themselves as a team. And then, of course, with the start they had, it really felt like we were maybe looking at another coaching change there.
Yep.
And now we're talking about who's better, Lagway or Sellers. Can Lagway get to the Heisman ceremony? Is this a team that can kind of surprise on a national level? And then you look at the schedule though, and I just don't know how they're necessarily going to be able to break through knowing who all they play.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case last year too. Now, is there a scenario where maybe the schedule becomes less daunting than it looks on paper? We saw that a little bit with South Carolina. Like going into the year last year, you would have had a trip to Oklahoma, for example, being a tough road matchup. Can you find a way to win that? And then Carolina goes out there and blows them out. Oklahoma ends up 2-6 in SEC play and 6-7 overall, and just did not really live up to what I'm sure their fans had as expectations in their first year in the conference. So that stuff does shift.
It does. And again, so much changes from one season to the next. That Oklahoma game, coming up this year in Williams Rest Stadium looks a whole lot tougher than the last time we saw Oklahoma, and, the game was over in essentially 5 minutes. I think it's interesting as well. You look at the strength of schedule, Texas at number 4 as of right now. Now, again, playing Ohio State on the road in week number 1 is doing a lot of heavy lifting with that, I'm sure. But again, kind of going back to how much the perception of teams change year to year, their schedule last year was regarded as one of the lighter ones in the SEC outside of playing Georgia, at home in the regular season. Obviously rematched with them in the SEC championship game, but they go to the Swamp, and that is a Florida team that looks tougher than it was a year ago. They do play Oklahoma in the neutral site game out there in the Cotton Bowl that is expected to be a whole lot better with John Mateer coming in at quarterback. Vanderbilt was a team that played them very close last year that's going to be coming into Austin. They still have to go to Georgia. Obviously, A&M's always going to be a tough game at the end of the regular season. I don't know what their FPI or what their strength schedule was going into last year, but I guarantee you it was not in the top 5 compared to this year.
Yeah, that was always the big knock on them last year, was just they did not play as tough as a schedule as everybody else. And, certainly there's going to be so much attention on that program next year, so much attention on Arch Manning as well. And it seems like people right now are split on him in terms of, is this all hype because of the Manning name? Is this a situation where, he's going to be able to remotely live up to all that hype? A lot of that, like whether or not they can navigate this, is going to be on his shoulders. And I think, honestly, I've said this before, I've said this a while, I think Quinn Ewers was in a situation where he is a little bit just undervalued the consistency he brought to them.
Yeah.
And, the pressure is going to be on Arch right away.
I'm a believer that two things can be true at the same time. I think Arch Manning can have a really, really good season while still not necessarily living up to all the hype that's been placed on his shoulders, which include national championship, Heisman Trophy, and everything in between. He can still have a really good season, but some people set that bar so insanely high, and I don't doubt that he can be that. I just want a little bit more of a sample size before I believe that necessarily. And again, when you have the last name of Manning, of course, those expectations are just going to come with it. But like I said, right off the jump, Ohio State week number 1, we're going to find out real quick just how good he potentially can be.
What does he even have to do to actually live up to that hype? I think that's a good point. I could see, I don't even know if it's possible for him to actually hit the expectation that some people have put on him. He could be, he's got to basically be the number 1 overall pick eventually if he's going to touch what some people have put on him.
Some people expect him to literally have a perfect season, and it's always fun to keep your eye on certain message boards during the season. If he throws a pick in the first half against Ohio State, there's all going to be people melting down. This guy's a bust. He's not worth it. He's not a Manning and all this kind of stuff. They're going to be ready to jump off the ship pretty quickly. Again, it's going to be a long season, but that's how big of a deal this guy is and what people expect out of him to, again, Texas is a program that's been sniffing it the past couple of years. He's expected to come in and finally take them truly back to the mountaintop that they haven't been at in 20 years.
Well, I think mentally, man, that's a lot. And he, on the surface, seems like he has all the answers. He seems like he doesn't let any of this stuff bother him, you know?
Yeah.
And if things go well, if they're riding high, if they're winning, then, certainly maybe he can keep that up. I do think everybody has a breaking point. Everybody has a point where it's just too much. So, for Arch, he's dealt with this stuff really his entire life. But as he dealt with it on the stage he's going to be on this year at Texas, in the SEC, with the expectations being so high, not just for him, but for that team and that program as well. I don't know, man. I do think that's one of the more fascinating storylines of the entire offseason this year. I've mentioned this before, though. I talked to an NFL scout buddy of mine, and I was like, dude, there's no way this guy is as good as some people, basically you guys, the NFL folks, have hyped him up to be. And he started laughing. He was like, no, he is. So there is an expectation kind of in that NFL community from a lot of people that he is fully, entirely, at least athletically, mentally capable of doing what a lot of people expect him to do.
By the way, easiest schedule in the SEC, which is still 20th overall, Missouri once again.
How do they keep getting away with this?
I don't know. Now, that schedule does include South Carolina, Alabama, like I said, Oklahoma, but they were guilty of definitely having the easiest schedule last year. And, again, the two toughest teams they played in Alabama and South Carolina, they lost to en route to a 10-win season, obviously. But, yeah, they get off easier, again, than some of these other schools.
Who do they play out of conference?
They play Central Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, and UMass. And now, like Kansas, they took a step back last year. Jalen Daniels is expected to be healthy this upcoming season, so that could be a tougher game. But, yeah, remember they went to UMass last year, and that was kind of weird. So they get a return trip from the Minutemen this year, which I don't think they should have any problem with. But, yeah, they're not exactly going out there and scheduling Goliaths in their non-conference.
Yeah, I think generally that's the difference when you look among the SEC teams is, like Florida, for example, not only are you playing, a tough SEC schedule, but you're going to Miami. You're going to play Florida State, which we'll see if they bounce back or not. You just kind of have an absence of those cupcakes that maybe Missouri's going to put on their schedule. Like we talk about Texas, you're going to Ohio State. So on top of your SEC, whatever when you shake it up and see what teams you're playing in conference, you have to also go to Ohio State. If you're South Carolina, you're also playing Clemson. Missouri just really has racked up a lot of bowl-eligible seasons while beating a lot of teams out of conference that they should beat.
Yeah, you remember they could have technically been in the conversation for the playoff themselves, but they were nowhere near Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss when it came to that conversation because their schedule was so much weaker. So even the SEC, yes, you can have a light enough schedule where that does not help you out despite, contrary to popular belief, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they, Drink was trying to hype that up, I think, the possibility.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you?
And then I think South Carolina ended that.
Yeah, they did, and that made that victory all that much sweeter because, listen, he has the most pleasurable face in college football. I think we can all agree on that. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, take a look at what's going to be happening tomorrow with camp that Wes will be at. It's coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, folks, let me tell you about our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating since 1983. KrantzCooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com. Temperatures have been relatively mild, but, you know, Columbia summers, that heat will be here before we know it. So hopefully you don't need our friends at Krantz for anything during the summer, but if you do, hit them up, 803-672-3224. They're going to get out there and take great care of you just like they do our guy Chris Clark. And I haven't, luckily, had to use them yet, but that's going to be my first call. If we have issues this summer, or maybe you want a little bit of peace of mind, call them out for preventative maintenance on your home or business so they can go ahead, come out, get a maintenance plan set up, and make sure you're going to be covered throughout these hot summer days. Again, that is Krantz Cooling, family-owned and operated since 1983. KrantzCooling.com. Phone number 803-672-3224.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler and Wes along with you for a few more minutes here on your Wednesday. Wes will be out of the studio tomorrow. Got some camp action going on, so got to get your backpack, got to get your campfire equipment, your sleeping bag. You all packed up and ready to go? Got your water, yeah.
Got to have your water.
Hydrate. Is somebody going to complain about the heat tomorrow?
Well,
And
Chris won't be out there, so
now is he the complainer? Is that his thing?
I feel like not to an annoying extent, but he will from time to time. But I think he knows.
It gets under your skin, so that's why he does it.
Yeah, or I think sometimes he says it and then he realizes that he said it. So
Is there, and you don't have to name names here, but out of the media scrum, is there one person that's a notorious, and it doesn't have to just be about the weather, but in general, complainer above everybody else?
No, because, I mean, you're talking about a small group of people that are even in the, I'm going to go cover recruiting camp category.
Right.
You know, so we're all kind of on the same page. I'll tell you, quick little story. Our guy, Joe Machika, that used to, write for us and has obviously been here on the show, been on the radio with you, Tyler. Joe was notorious for just coming up with wild claims. Out there. Like, I guess he just gets bored and starts thinking about things, like, kind of like I could throw this football over the mountains type claims. Like,
all right.
Talking about, I'm going to call him out. I don't care. He was talking about how he could hit the top of the indoor. I can't remember if he was punting it or throwing it.
Okay. Both would be hard.
And I said, Joe, I will give you $10,000 if you go grab a ball and can hit the roof right now.
Yeah.
He didn't even try. I'm like, free $10,000, nothing to lose. So, yeah, that's a Machika thing.
So it's spatial assessment? Like,
I guess so. Or just bored up there, like looking up like, oh, I bet I could hit that.
Yeah.
No, dude.
I'll bring that up next time I have him on.
Please do.
Get his thoughts on that.
Randomly just ask him, could he hit the roof?
I'll see what he says. But when you go out to one of these things, obviously a lot going on. Do you know how many campers there's going to be tomorrow?
Don't know the exact number. Typically, a smaller day, you're talking, maybe 100 kids or less. Some of the bigger ones, you're talking about 300, 400 guys out there. A lot of times, though, that gets kind of whittled down to you're watching 10, 20 guys who are true potential FBS or SEC athletes. And a lot of times we're able to get enough information to where we kind of know who we're looking for. But at the same time, sometimes you'll be out there, you'll be like, all right, who's that 6'6" offensive tackle?
Yeah.
Obviously, they look a little bit different than 90% of the other guys out here that they're going up against. And so then it's more just kind of information gathering. Who is that? Let me get their information. What year are they? Stuff like that.
Who are you keeping your eye on in particular for tomorrow?
I don't have my list yet. I'm hoping to get that before tomorrow morning. But from what I've heard, they are going to have some sort of potential actual rising seniors coming in that could end up with offers. And then a lot of this is more about kind of the junior class. So, frankly, there'll be a lot of stuff out there that the average fan maybe doesn't even care about reading about yet.
Sure.
But for us, it's really important just to go ahead and start to get an idea of players that we're going to be writing about a lot in the future. It's kind of just foundation building.
Yeah.
Put your eyes on guys. Oh, I've seen that. When I read about this guy got an offer, I've put my eyes on him, I've seen him, I've watched him type thing.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, was this the type of camp where J.R. Johnson got discovered? Was that before his senior year?
Yep, J.R. got his. Nicky Mawari got discovered. I mean, in a lot of those cases, the staff will kind of have that name probably highlighted, like, hey, we want to watch this guy. But it's a true opportunity for you to go earn an offer.
Well, let's have all that on the Gamecock Central tomorrow. May also check with him tomorrow as well as camp is going on. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, halftime show with myself and Dimitri Ravenos on your Wednesday here on The Game.